Okay, so I'm just going to go through the answers to that practice test. So the reference angle of negative 873 degrees. So remember, reference angle is the positive acute angle. So it's either going to be in one of these four places. So what I'm going to do is start with negative 873 and then add 360. So it's still negative, and then add 360. So it's still negative, and then add 360. And I get 207 degrees. So 207 degrees is going to look like this. And the reference angle will be 207 degrees minus 180 degrees, or 27 degrees. Okay, next up. Expressed in simplified form, 235 degrees is equivalent to, well, remember, our ratio is this. So pi radians equals 180 degrees. So I'm going to flip that around. 1 degree will be pi divided by 180. So 235 degrees will be 235 times this. So 235 pi divided by 180. And so the quickest way to get that, bring my calculator back up, is, excuse me, I'm going to go 235 divided by 180 and say, convert that to a fraction. So math, and then enter, and then enter. We get 47 pi over 36. So there's A and B. So 47 plus 36 is 83. Next, let's get rid of this. Excuse me, an angle that is coterminal with an angle of negative 11 pi over 4. So coterminal differs by 360 degrees, or 2 pi radians. But let's not think of this as 2 pi. Let's think of this as 8 pi over 4. So in standard position, we're going to need a positive angle. So negative 11 pi over 4 plus 8 pi over 4 is negative 3 pi over 4. Okay, not good enough. So negative 3 pi over 4 plus 8 pi over 4 is 5 pi over 4. And our standard position angle is B. A fan blade has a diameter of 30. Okay, so as soon as I read diameter, that means the radius is 16 inches, because nowhere do we have anything where we use D in a formula. Okay, if the blade is rotated 532 degrees about its center, then a point on the tip would travel a distance of approximately. So we want this formula. A is equal to r theta. So r is 16, and theta has to be in radians. So it's 532 degrees, and then kind of the same deal as what we did before. So that would be, got to pull up this. So I'm going to have 16 times 532 times pi, I'll just do all that, divided by 180. And we get 148.5 inches, or 149 inches. Okay, clear that. Let's put that away. Pop down here. The terminal arm of a standard position angle theta passes through the point negative 2, 6. All right, I'm all about the diagrams. So this will be the point negative 2, 6. That will be the terminal arm. That will be the standard position angle theta. the value of theta, where theta is between 0 and 2 pi. Okay, so we can see it there. So what we have, if this is the point negative 2, 6, then we know our x and our y. So this is opposite, and this is adjacent, and it's tan theta, which is opposite over adjacent. So theta will be the inverse tan of opposite. Now, we don't want to do this with a negative, right? What we're going to do instead is we're going to work out the reference angle. So theta r. So we make that positive. All right. Now we need to be in radians. Okay, so make sure your calculator is in radian mode, which it is. So I'm going to go tan inverse of, I'll do this bit in my head, tan inverse of 3. So that's a reference angle. That's this angle is 1.24. And I want theta. So my theta is going to be pi minus 1.2499 dot 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 dot. Okay, so I'm just going to go second pi minus, and we'll go second answer to pull that down, and we get 1.89. So to the nearest hundredth, theta equals 1.89 radians. Okay, just going to clear that. We'll pop that down. Let's move on to the next one. The point 1/5 y lies on the unit circle in quadrant 1. All right. Look, I'm drawing on a tablet. It's not so easy. The point 1/5, so 1/5 y. So we'll call that 1/5 y. If the value of y is a root b over c. Okay, so if it's on the unit circle, then we know that the radius is 1. So we know that x squared plus y squared equals 1. 1/5 squared plus y squared equals 1. Y squared will be 1 minus 1/25. So y squared will be 24/25. So y, now it would be plus or minus, but we're in quadrant 1. So we'll just write it plus or minus, what do we got? Root 24, well, let's do this, the root of 24. Okay, so we know it's positive. So let's go root 24 over 5. And what goes into 24 is 4. So that's 2 root 6 over 5. And 2 plus 6 plus 5 is 13. Sorry, I'm running off the tablet here. So the value of a plus b plus c is 13. Next up, it's secant theta, and theta is a quadrant 3 angle. Okay, so we are in this quadrant. There's theta. Then the value of tan theta. Okay, so secant theta is negative 2. That means that cos theta is negative 1/2. Now, cosine is x over r. So we know that x is negative 1 and r is always positive, so r is 2. Now, in quadrant 3, our y value will also be a negative. So, same deal. We just go x squared plus y squared equals r squared. So, negative 1 squared plus y squared is 2 squared. Y squared is 4 minus 1. Okay, that's going to be positive 1. That's 4. So y is plus or minus root 3. But in quadrant 3, okay, so we know x is negative 1, y is negative root 3, and r is 2. Tan theta is defined as y over x, negative root 3 over negative 1, which is positive root 3. C. Use the following information to answer that. Okay, there's a lot of information. Which of the functions have the same period? Okay, so let's figure out periods. So the period is equal to 2 pi over b. So for m of theta, the period will be 2 pi over 2, which is pi. For g of theta, period equals 2 pi over 1/2, which is 4 pi. For h of theta, the period. Okay, now this is a tan function. The period of tan is pi. So this will be pi over 2, which is just pi over 2. And again for tan, so now this is 2 tan 1/4 theta. So for s of theta, the period will be pi over 1/4, which is 4 pi. So 4 pi is g and s. So g of theta and s of theta are going to give you both periods of 4 pi. Right, let's say here, except for tan. And the period is pi over b. All right, last but not least, the point 0.37 and pi over 4 comma 5 lie on the graph as defined of f of theta. Write the equation, blah. Okay, so I always like to start with D. And I know it says state, but it doesn't hurt to work it out, right? So D is the average of the two values. It's max plus min over 2. So 37 plus 5, which is 42 over 2, which is 21. Next, A, max minus min over 2. So 37 minus 5 over 2, 32 over 2 is 16. Now you notice, right, if we're doing a cosine function, then this is an unshifted cosine function, right? A cosine starts at the y-axis and the maximum. So in this case, c is equal to 0, right? So all this is for part A. And the period, well, let's see, to go from here to here will be one period, so the period is equal to pi over 2. So B is equal to 2 pi over the period. So B is equal to 2 pi over 2, which is 2 pi times 2 over pi, which is 4. So part A, our equation, y is equal to 16 cos. Now, you don't necessarily need square brackets, but let's put brackets here. 4x, okay? Now, c is 0, right? So 4x plus 21. Now, part B. If the equation was written as a sine function, no, not just a sine function, but a reflected sine function. So to help with that, I'm going to draw the midline, because the characteristic of a sine function is where it meets the midline. Now I say the midline going up, but that's where a is greater than 0. If it's at the midline going down, then a is less than 0, and that's what we want. And the value of c then is this, which, if this is at 0, and this is at pi over 4, and remember that a sine function is split into 4 parts, the first part is from the max to the midline, and the second part is from the midline to the min, and if that distance is pi over 4, then that's half of that, or pi over 8. Now remember, it's written in this form, and since it's right pi over 8, we want it to be minus pi over 8, so c is equal to pi, squeeze that in, hang on, I'm going to drag this down a bit. So c is equal to pi over 8, right? I mean, your full equation, if you wrote your full equation, it's a reflected sign. B value is the same, right? X, I want to go right pi over 8, and the d value is the same. So we know it's the same between A, B, C, and D, right? The A, now the A can change sign, as in not cos to sine, but as in positive 16 to negative 16. We're going to go right, so if we match that form up with this, match this with this, you'll see that the c follows a minus sign, so c is equal to pi over 8. And we're done. That's late night movie show. So hopefully this helped, and if you're reviewing this before Friday, that would be a good thing. And good luck on Friday's quiz.